On the day of their wedding, just as their tradition demands, the brides-to-be alongside other maidens from same kindred would cover their faces with clothes and allow the groom to make his choice. At this point, whosoever he chooses, he must marry. If he mistakenly chose the wrong bride, he must take her home and marry her. They believed whosoever he chooses must be the God's destined wife for him, and assumes the chosen bride is the rightful wife for him, and they will live happily and peacefully ever after. While the bride they came for must be the wrong one and would bring misfortune to the groom if he had married her. On the day of their wedding, something unimaginable happened. When the prince was called to choose his bride among the blindfolded maidens, he chose one of the maidens. When he uncovered her, it was Ugomma he picked. The world turned into misery for the prince. Words was not enough to describe how badly he felt, seeing that he has been tricked to picking his worst enemy. The most painful part of it was that no one had ever made this costly mistake since time immemorial. Why of all people would the prince make this kind of mistake, picking the wrong bride, and of all people he picked Ugomma? He felt like strangling her to death that minute. To Iloma, it was like a nightmare. Now that she thought her years of suffering has ended, not knowing she has been daydreaming, she could not bear the shame and disgrace, so she ran away from the venue. Everywhere became cold. It seems the cloud has covered the whole atmosphere, like midnight darkness in the middle of the day. To Ugomma and her mother, their joy knew no bound. They were so happy that things went according to their plans. Iroma ran away from home. She ran into the bush and stayed there for days, crying, "Why has God forsaken me? Why do God allow Ugomma and her mother take away everything good that belonged to me? All my inheritance, they took them from me. All that my mommy had left for me, they took them all. They denied me education, and now they had taken away the one thing that makes me happy. What is life without the one I love?" Iloma developed serious hatred towards the prince. Someone she has been with, why can't he recognize her? She felt the prince intentionally chose Ugomma because they had earlier discussed how to identify her in the midst of other maidens, even while covered. But he still chose her. Back to the palace. Since after the wedding, Ugomma never set her eyes on the prince again. She stayed day after day, waiting for the prince to come back to her, but he never did. He has gone out since that day in search of Iloma because he needed an explanation from her. Why would she mislead me to choosing the wrong person? If she had a change of heart about the marriage, she would have informed me earlier than making me choose the wrong person and make a mess of myself. While the prince was in deep thought about the whole scenario, a forest guard ran to him and told him that he saw Iloma in the bush, crying. The guard described the place he saw her to him, but before the prince could get to the place, Iloma has already encouraged herself and decided to head back home. She was ready to face whoever tries to insult or make mockery of her. But to her greatest surprise, people came to console and sympathize with her. Some people brought her food and clothes when they heard she was back. They encouraged her not to give up on hope. This got Egudi angry. She was expecting people to disgrace and make mockery of her, but the reverse was the case. Instead of them despising her, they loved her the more. Ugoma began to parade herself around the village as the princess and queen-to-be. She made people bow for her anywhere they come in contact with her. She also made the women spread their clothes on the ground for her to walk on, be it on the road or in the market. When the prince got the news that Iloma has gone back to her father's house, he went to see her. "Why did you tell that maiden to give me the wrong information?" the prince asked her angrily upon sighting her. "What maiden?" Iloma replied. The prince began to explain. "On the day of the wedding, a maiden came to me and said you have changed the signal because your sister Ugoma knew about it. So she told me you would whisper to me. So when I came across the maiden, she whispered and I thought it was you, not knowing it was your witch of a sister. I didn't send anyone to meet you," Iloma replied. It was then that they realized it must be all Ugoma's doing. "We must bring that maiden and force her to confess before the elders because she tricked me," the prince said, happy that he would soon get rid of Ugoma after the confession. But Iloma disagreed with him. She said, "Do you want to put yourself in trouble? Are you not aware we were not allowed to give signals at all? You are supposed to identify and know my figure, not to make mistakes. There is nothing you can do about it. Even if you present this evidence to the elders, they can do nothing because the choice you made on the wedding day must be the choice the gods had made for you. So you must learn to live with her. You are the one I want, and that is final. If I can't be with you, then I won't be with any other woman, and I won't let you be with any other man," the prince said and left angrily. He went home and confronted Ugoma, but she lied. She pleaded that he give them a chance because she believed the gods ordained them husband and wife, and they would bring fortune to each other. Of all that she said, the prince ignored her and walked away. "What a stupid constitution. I wish we are from the same village. I would change this your stupid constitution that same day. But I know there must be a way out, which I must find." One day, the prince heard that a rich businessman came for Iloma's hand in marriage. He sent his guards to go and stop the marriage, which they did. Iloma, after preparing for her traditional marriage, looking gorgeous and more beautiful in her beautiful traditional marriage attire, she heard that her husband-to-be got kidnapped on his way. When this happened, people began to murmur. Some said she was born with misfortune. Her stepmother said she knew she was cursed from birth and can never get married to any man. Iloma remembered what the prince told her, that she cannot be with any other man aside him. She suspected he must have a hand in what that had happened to her suitor. The next day, she went to where the prince was staying in order to keep away from Ugoma to confront him. But to her greatest surprise, she saw the prince and her so-called husband-to-be drinking together and chatting. It happened that her suitor was the prince's best friend who came back from the city. The prince found out he was the one after abducting him, and after explaining the situation to him, he understood and agreed to let go. Iloma did not know what to say at this moment, but she confessed to them that she never loved the man. She said she only wanted to marry him just to get away from her stepmother's wickedness. One day, during the prince's conversation with his friend, he asked him if he had presented the evidence of what happened during the wedding to the elders and hear their verdict first. But he said Ilioma did not agree with that because it was against the rule to even give a signal. That makes it easy then. Your major concern should be to make the maiden confess before the elders. If it's against the rule to give signals, then she should bear the punishment, his friend said. Prince Obidike bought the idea and began to look for the maiden that had lied to him. He found her and brought her before the elders to confess. He hoped her confession would solve the problem, but the elders told him that he had made his choice. Then the prince made up his mind that he would take a second wife. As a prince, you are entitled to have as many wives as you want. So he arranged his marriage with Ilioma. Ugomma wanted to stop them but couldn't. Then her mother told her to bother less, for she was the first wife and the queen to be. Decision making in the house is in your hand. All you need to do is to make the palace unbearable for Ilioma, and she will live on her own. She promised to take her to a native doctor to get jams that would enable her control her husband, and she can manipulate him to send Ilioma packing. Ugomma agreed with her mother. She went and apologized to Ilioma and made friends with her. Ilioma was surprised for her sudden change of attitude. She began to treat her well, while her sole purpose was for the prince to see her as a good person and welcome her into his life. Then she can execute her plans. Little did she know that she was dealing with people that are wiser than her. During the wedding, Ugomma helped in preparing Ilioma. She made sure everything went smoothly without loopholes. Her attitude surprised everyone, and people commended her for her selfless services. The prince and her stepsister, who is now her co-wife, thanked her, and they had dinner together. For the first time since she married the prince, they are sitting together. She was so happy. I never knew it would be this easy for me to execute my plans. Ha 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 ha. She laughed out loud. Then she said to herself, by the time I would come back from the shrine, Ilioma, you will fly away from this palace. The next day, after she returned from the native doctor's place and prepared meal for the prince with the jam she got, she served the meal and waited for the prince and his co-wife to return. Because she left the house very early in the morning, she had no idea where they went to. While she was waiting patiently, one of the bodyguards came and informed her that the prince and Ilioma would not be coming back to the palace anytime soon because they had traveled to abroad. He said, the prince has instructed that you are free to go back to your father's house whenever you got tired of being your own husband. He told her that the prince only treated her well the past days because he don't want her to suspect his plans with his lovely wife Ilioma. He gave her a note. On it, he wrote, I know you have your own plans, which made you to be all kind and nice to us, but I am sorry for beating you in your own game. Ugomma do not know what to do, so they knew all along and played me too. What am I going to do now? It's obvious I am my own husband. Why didn't I suspect they had the plans of running away after marriage? Hey, what face would I use to stand before the villagers if they knew my husband abandoned me and ran away with my stepsister? She consoled herself by saying that she is still the prince's wife whether he is around or not. She remained the legitimate wife of the prince, and everyone must accord her the respect as the princess. She continued gallivanting the whole village, punishing and treating people badly, all in the name that she is the prince's wife. Till one day, news came to the village that the prince now had a son from his wife Iloma. The whole village was filled with joy on hearing this, because this now makes Iloma the queen to be, because she is the mother to the next heir. Ugomma do not know what to do at this point. She staying in the palace is as good as she is not married. She packed her things and went back to her father's house, where she stayed with her mother. Because she had no home training, she had issues every day with her mother. This made her mother so angry that she gave her out in marriage to an old palm wine tapper who used to beat her every day. Years later, the prince returned home with his family to take over his father's throne after his father died. He got to know that Ugomma now lives in misery with her 4 children. Iloma saw her and could not recognize her because she was looking so unkempt. Ugomma, on recognizing Iloma, apologized to her for all the wrongs she and her mother did to her, which she forgave her. She gave her some clothes and promised to train her children in school. She took them as her own. She also forgave her stepmother. Obidike was made the king, and Iloma became his queen, and they ruled their kingdom in peace and harmony, maintaining his father's legacy.